Alright guys, we gotta talk some Pokemon here today, since it is finally time for me to do my damage report for Pokemon Legends ZA. And I'm gonna go ahead and cover the Mega Dimension DLC for this game as well, all in one video, since both the game and the DLC are already out. They came out late last year. I am pretty late in getting around to doing this damage report, because frankly, I kept forgetting that this game even existed. So, it took me a while to get around to watching that playthrough. But anyway, I will cover both the base game and the DLC here today. Like I just mentioned, and like with all Pokemon games on the Switch, I did not actually purchase this game or play this game. I just watched a playthrough of it on YouTube. But I did want to, give my general thoughts and impressions about what I saw. So, like I said, I'm going to be covering the DLC as well. Now, the Mega Dimension DLC was actually revealed before the base game even came out, which means that this content of this DLC absolutely was just cut content from the base game that they charged you more for, which is always the case with DLC, but now it's just more in your face about it. So, the base game did end up coming out on both Switch 1 and Switch 2. So, if you bought the game on Switch 2, it is $70. And then the DLC was an additional $30 on top of that. So, for the complete experience here, you are paying $100 for this fucking game, which is the highest Pokemon has reached so far. Where will it stop? Nobody knows. Each one of these releases seems to be getting higher than the last. Sword and Shield, including the DLC, was 90. Scarlet and Violet, including DLC, was 95. And now this game has hit 100, including DLC. So, hell, the people still buying these games would buy anything, so I say double it. Make the next game 200. Fuck it. Who gives a shit? But, yeah, insane price tag on this. I guess I'll address performance up front here. The playthrough I watched was on Switch 2, and performance-wise, everything on it seemed to be fine as far as like frame rates and running smooth and stuff like that. I did not look into the Switch 1 version of the game at all, so for all I know, that could be running at like 4 frames per second. Kind of like Scarlet and Violet were. But at least the Switch 2 version of the game seemed to run fine to me. I know Scarlet and Violet ended up getting a Switch 2 updates patch thing that was supposed to help with performance. I did not look into that at all because, frankly, I don't give a shit. So, yeah, but the Switch 2 version of the game at least seemed to run fine and definitely, played better than Scarlet and Violet did on Switch 1. So, overall, this game, the basic premise of this game, up front, I will say that we are going to be getting into spoiler territory here as far as the story and everything goes. So, if you care about any of that, you've been warned. But anyway, we knew a little bit about this game going in. We knew it was set entirely in Lumio City. This game, timeline-wise, did end up being set 5 years after the events of Pokemon X and Y. So a much more contemporary setting than Pokemon Legends Arceus, the last one in this little sub-series. So the basic concept of this game was that Mega Power was building up in Lumio City and causing like random wild Pokemon to undergo rogue Mega Evolution, where they can Mega Evolve without actually having a trainer. So AZ, the character from Pokemon X and Y, he's running a hotel now, and he's working with this company called Quasartico Inc., and together they organize this tournament kind of thing called the ZA Royale, where they're trying to find strong trainers in order to be able to take on these rogue Mega Pokemon and stop them from running wild, and also figure out the cause of this whole situation and put an end to it. So overall, as a premise, I think that was actually fine for this game. Compared to Legends Arceus, this game did benefit, I think, from having the more contemporary setting where Pokemon trainers are more commonplace. So being able to have a greater focus on trainer battles in this game as opposed to just, battling and catching wild Pokemon, I think did help with the monotony of the whole thing. That was one of my big complaints with Legends Arceus, where it kind of got old, just, battling the Pokemon all the time and having very few trainer encounters. This game had much more of a balance. where you had the similar wild Pokemon mechanics as Legends Arceus did, but you had a much heavier focus on battling other trainers and moving up the ranks in the ZA Royale. Which, one thing that I did think was kind of dumb about that, the whole premise of the ZA Royale was starting at Z rank and moving up through all of the letters all the way up to A rank. However, partway through the story, you end up doing a mission where you basically jump straight from V rank all the way up to F rank, which begs the question, why even do the whole alphabet rank gimmick if you're going to skip over half of it? So, I thought that was kind of dumb. However, I will say that didn't make it feel like the game was too short or anything. Content-wise, this game, I believe, even prior to the DLC, this game has more missions in it total than Legends Arceus did. I'm not totally sure about that. I didn't get the full mission count in front of me. But I know for a fact, at least post-DLC, this game definitely has more missions than Legends Arceus did, including main missions and side missions. So, it wasn't like a shortage of contents issue. Now, a lot of those side quests, again, were stuff where it's just like, battle this one trainer, or go catch this one Pokemon, or, really short, simple things like that. But still, compared to Legends Arceus, this did at least feel more content-rich to me, so I did think that was an improvement. Now, I guess I'll go ahead and cover the DLC a little bit here, too. The premise of the DLC was set in the post game, and this little girl named Ansha shows up with a Hoopa, and it turns out that Ansha is actually Diantha's daughter, the champion from the Kalos region. And you go through this whole thing where you have to help Ansha make donuts to feed to Hoopa, so Hoopa can open up these portals to go into Hyperspace Lumiose, which is just Lumiose City, the same map we already had, just drained of all color. So you go into these little pockets of Hyperspace Lumiose, and the whole gimmick of this thing was they had Pokemon that were over level 100 in this hyperspace dimension thing. So the way this worked is those Pokemons were over that level when you battled them, but when you actually caught them, they were, at a normal under 100 level. And your Pokemon could be raised to over level 100, but only while you're in hyperspace. It was an effect of the different kind of donuts you could make. So it was a temporary transformation, basically a temporary level boost. You couldn't actually train your Pokemon to higher than 100. They just gained an X amount of levels based on what donut you fed Hoopa. So the whole concept seemed kind of gimmicky to me. I guess it makes for more of a challenge because obviously the higher stats and everything. But I wasn't a huge fan of the way that was implemented. But overall, the DLC main quest line was shorter than the base game's main quest line, obviously. This was clearly meant to be the post game of this game, but they just cut it and charged you $30 extra for it. So it was fine for what it was, I guess. Of course, you had the whole mystery of how the hyperspace dimension thing exists and getting into that. So a lot of the content of the DLC was kind of just what you already did in the base game, but more with a little bit of a twist put on it. So it wasn't anything drastically different, but it did manage to pad out the post game a little. Again, it's definitely something that should have just been included in the game to begin with. But, it's modern Pokemon, so what are you going to do? Now, as far as the story itself, I know no one really plays a Pokemon game for the story, but I'm going to cover it anyway. As far as the base plot, I thought it was fine. It didn't really impress me any, but it was absolutely a step up from Scarlet and Violet and even Sword and Shield. Now, as for the characters, most of the legacy characters that were returning from previous games, I liked how they were handled for the most part. Like I already mentioned, AZ was a big character in this game. He runs the hotel now, so we get to see him again with his Eternal Flower Floette that he got at the end of X and Y. We get to see several other characters return. Lysander is back. It turns out he survived the whole plot of X and Y with the ultimate weapon and all that. He's all fucked up and lost his memory now, but he is alive. We get to see Mabel again from Team Flare, Emma, Karina comes back in the DLC. She's a big part of that quest line. And overall, I thought the way they handled all those characters coming back, I thought they did a pretty good job with that. I was pretty satisfied with all of them. It was nice to see them again. Now, on the other hand, the new characters that were introduced in this game were largely insufferable to me. I didn't really like very many of the new characters. Ansha, the little girl in the DLC, was okay, I guess. The blonde dude who just wanted to punch everything all the time, what was his name? Ivor? Something like that. He was okay. Everyone else was just insufferably annoying. I didn't really like any of the other members of Team MZ, which is supposed to be your little group that's solving all the problems around here. Basically, everyone introduced in this game was just a different kind of annoying. The biggest offenders were probably Naveen and Kanari, since Kanari was like a annoying streamer girl, and Naveen is her simp, basically. So all that was really cringe and just aggravating to me. It grated on my nerves, something terrible. So I didn't really like any of those characters for the most part. And another big thing that kind of bothered me about the whole thing was that all of these annoying characters who came together, they all basically had the same goal. Like, everyone in it was a good guy. Some of them were kind of positioned, or like they were kind of supposed to look like bad guys, like the Rust Syndicate and shit like that. But it turns out that they're actually just trying to help small children and do what's right for the city and, be positive. And the only reason that all these little subgroups were even in conflict with each other was because they all got on each other's nerves. So the entire conflict in this game just seemed contrived to me, and felt like they just did it because we had to have a plot of a game. So I didn't really like any of that. I miss the days when we can have actually villainous characters, actual bad guys. There was no real bad guy in this game. Again, it was just people that were positioned to sort of be annoying, even though they had the same goal as what you were trying to accomplish. So I didn't like that. It felt very watered down. It felt very, like designed by committee, modern, safe way to take a story. And I just found the whole thing aggravating more than anything else. So while the basic plot was fine, a lot of the characters I absolutely did not care for, and that really hampered my overall enjoyment of the story. Now, another big thing I want to address here is the map of the game. I know there's been quite a few complaints about the map, actually, which this may be an unpopular opinion, but overall, I actually thought the map was fine for the most part. I do have some complaints, but even just the idea of setting a Pokemon game entirely in one city, I think can work. And overall, for the most part, I think it did work here mostly okay. My biggest issues with the map was that there's two things. One thing is that most of the buildings are still not enterable, which is a problem that carries over from Scarlet and Violet. The Pokemon centers were kind of a building, but they're kind of open air. They're sort of like a corner booth in a mall or something. You can just kind of walk in and out of them. So you don't actually go inside and come back out. You just kind of walk through. Besides that, the only other real buildings you can enter are stuff that is important to the story, and a few like cafes and stuff that are like the side content of the game. So I didn't like that, most of the buildings are just there for show. It had the same issue with Scarlet and Violet, where even all the shops are just menus, where you walk up to them to go in and you press A by the door and it just pops up a menu for whatever shit you can buy from there. So I didn't care for that. And then the other problem with it was a lot of the places really felt samey throughout the city. Like, it was hard to tell at any given time what area of the city you were even in. You couldn't really tell them all apart. So I thought they could have done a better job as far as like differentiating the different districts in the city and making them look or feel different. But besides that, I think they did a fairly good job. Of course, they had the wild zones incorporated into the city where you can catch wild Pokemon, where it's like little nature parks and stuff. And then they did have wild Pokemon, not in the wild zones, that were just like on rooftops or whatever. So, you could traverse around and catch Pokemon even if you're outside of a wild zone. And then at nighttime in the game, they had the battle zones where you could go in and face the other ZA Royale trainers to, earn points towards moving up the ranks. Which the battle zones changed every night. It was like different random ones that popped up. So, for the most part, I think they did fine with the map. There's definitely room for improvement there, but I don't think it was as bad as some people have made it seem like. As far as, limiting it all to one city, I think they did a decent job of it. The whole hyperspace Lumios thing, where it's just the same maps again, but without color, I thought was kind of lame. Especially got Hoopa opening portals to places that seemed like a good opportunity to give us some more varied set pieces. Maybe let us get some glimpses at some other parts of the Kalos region, even if you, don't get to fully explore them. I felt like there was more potential there that was really wasted. But, yeah, for the most part, I wasn't too terribly bad about the map. So, moving on to the next big thing, which is the gameplay and the combat for this game. Which, for me, this feels a little weird to talk about since, like I said, I didn't play this game, I just watched a playthrough of it. Which, for all the other Pokemon games, wasn't as big of an issue, in my mind, at least, because all the Pokemon games basically play the same. Despite any, generational differences between them, they got the same basic battle system, and they all pretty much feel the same, when they're in your hands. But this game is a complete departure from everything we've gotten used to in Pokemon games, even more so than Legends Arceus was. This game had an entirely real-time combat system that is a huge departure from what we've had in other Pokemon games, even, a step further than the sort of unique combats that we had in Legends Arceus. So it feels kind of weird to talk about the gameplay, not having actually gotten my hands on it. But from this more, sort of detached, just looking over shoulder perspective, I actually didn't really have any problem with the combat for the most part. It seemed to work fine. It's not something that I would necessarily want to, outright replace the turn-based combat that we've had all these years. But if this became the standard for any Legends games in this sub-series going forward, I actually would be okay with that. Overall, again, from my detached perspective, it seemed fine. A lot of people have been, drawing comparisons to things like Spectrobes and maybe even Digimon World, which there are some similarities there. One thing it reminded me of, I might be the only person whose mind jumped to this, but the whole picking your different moves with the cooldown thing in real time, it actually reminded me of White Knight Chronicles a little bit. So, from just watching it, I actually didn't really have any problem with the combat. Maybe I would feel different if I had my hands on it. I'll leave any sort of nitpicking criticisms as far as, things they need to change or tweak in order to improve this or that. I'll leave that to people that actually played it. But overall, I actually don't hate at least the idea of this combat. It seemed generally fine to me. Now, some random things about the combat or just about gameplay in general, especially compared to Legends Arceus. One thing is that held items were brought back in this game, which were absent in Legends Arceus. Which part of that was because, Mega Evolution is back, so you needed the Pokemon to hold the Mega Stones. But they've done Mega Evolution without held items before in the Let's Go games, so wasn't sure they were going to do that here, but they did. They did bring back held items, which again I think is a good thing. It's something that should have been in Legends Arceus, frankly. Unfortunately, there are still no abilities. That was something that was absent from Legends Arceus as well, still absent in this game, which again I think is a mistake. They brought back the Alpha Pokemon from Legends Arceus as well, with no real explanation for why they're here or where they came from. I'm still not a fan of the whole Alpha Pokemon concept. This whole just big Pokemon thing is completely overdone to me, and I can't make myself care about this. But yeah, those were back. The strong style and agile style moves from Legend Arceus have been replaced with a new system called Plus Moves, which is kind of similar to the strong style moves where, they hit harder, but they use up part of your little Mega Evolution gauge in the corner. Or if your Pokemon is Mega Evolved, then all their moves become Plus Moves. So that was a way to let Pokemon without a Mega Evolution kind of be able to fight on the level of a Mega, at least to an extent, by still being able to utilize the meter, at least. So that seemed fine as an idea. They did remove the crafting system, which again, giving the setting probably makes sense, but I feel like that's just, lost content. I feel like maybe they could have implemented that in a different way, but they just removed it entirely. They brought back the on-demand evolution thing from Legends Arceus, which I really liked, actually. That's something I would like to see them keep as a main series staple in the other main series games. But they did bring that back here, where, you can tell your Pokemon to evolve, basically, from the menu once they've hit a higher enough level or whatever. So, I like that concept. They got the same sort of move system that Legends Arceus did, where all the moves that your Pokemon has learned is in one giant move pool, and you can just select which moves you want them to have at any given time. So, again, that's something they should probably implement in all the main series games going forward, too, because it just makes things a lot easier to deal with. And actually like that concept in both Legends games. So, I'm glad they brought that back as well. One thing I actually didn't like was they actually almost entirely removed the concept of weather in this game. Rain is still there, but you can't set it up with like rain dance or anything. It's just that if it happens to be raining in the overworld, then rain is in effect. But all the other weather conditions, sandstorm, hail, snow, whatever, all of the other ones are not available in the game at all. So again, that just feels like removing something that is not necessary to remove. I don't know really why they felt the need to do that. So I didn't care for that. Breeding is still missing, which again, that was missing in Legends Arceus as well. It did not return here, so you can't breed your Pokemon, you can't hatch eggs, you can't do any of that. Fishing is also still gone. Again, that was missing from the last game. Still missing here. Which, one thing that they did take out of this game, which I was kind of surprised by this, they actually removed surfing entirely, any sort of water travel. Any sort of, like Poke Ride equivalent, that is entirely gone. So you cannot travel across water in any way. Fly is replaced with just a fast travel system, not even like the little flying taxis or whatever the fuck like they had in Galar and Paldea. So all that's completely gone. The closest thing we have to sort of an HM Poke Ride sort of thing is certain types of moves could clear obstacles in the overworld. Like you had like some boulders and stuff that you could smash with fighting type moves. You had like some piles of sludge or whatever that you could clear with water type moves. So there was things like that. But as far as like, different sorts of traversal or elements like that, that would be an equivalent to a Poke Ride, be an equivalent to HMs. For the most part, that was entirely missing. Which, missing surfing just felt weird in a Pokemon game, not being able to travel across water. Not that there's a ton of water in a city anyway, but there are canals and stuff, there are some water areas in the game. So not being able to traverse those at all just felt weird. And again, I got a rant about this. You knew this was coming if you're familiar with this channel. One of the things that absolutely drove me crazy about this game, when you're running around the city, you can, climb the scaffolding or ladders or whatever, and you get up on the rooftops, and you can travel from rooftop to rooftop. But one of the things in this game, of course, if you leap off one of these buildings, you're not going to plummet to your death, because this is a kid's game. So they had to come up with some way where you don't die jumping off of a building. And the way they fucking came up with this is they turned your goddamn Rotom phone into a fucking parachute. Like, of all the solutions to this, you're playing a fucking Pokemon game. Like, you couldn't have a Pokemon catch you or, gently carry you down, or... There's so many solutions to this. I know this is technically a Pokemon gently carrying you down because Rotom is in the phone, but you jump off the building and as you're falling, you just fall and free fall until you get like right above the surface of the ground. And then you pull your phone out and your phone floats in midair while you're desperately grasping to it, letting you, gently land. And that is so fucking lame. They went a step further later in the game because you get a feature where you can sort of kind of glide with the phone to, sort of jump off of stuff and get a boost to reach a rooftop or whatever. And I've ranted to no end how I hate mobile gaming and smartphones and all that in general. And I've hated how much of a presence smartphones and the Rotom phone and the Arc phone and all these fucking phones have had in Pokemon games in the last few generations. And this takes it to a whole nother level. I hated the Arc phone really bad in Legends Arceus because it just felt really out of place being in an ancient setting like that. This is at least a modern setting, so, it makes sense for a smartphone to be there and to exist. But to use it as a fucking glider, like, give me a fucking break. You could have come up with any number of things other than that, and they gotta stick to the phone because phone all the fucking time. Jesus Christ, it never ends with these people. So, I fucking hated that. That's one of my biggest complaints about the fucking game, actually, was just using the phone like that, because fuck me. I'm so sick of goddamn smartphones. Ridiculous. So, I had to get that off my chest. But yeah, I hated that entire concept. That was really lame. So, beyond that, a few other little random things I did want to mention. I will give them credit for this. They did continue a trend that they've been doing for the last few games, where they make several of the, older generation mythical Pokemon just available in this game to catch. You can get a Hoopa, you can get a Darkrai. There's a few more. You can get Keldeo, I think, again. You can get Magearna. Some of them are still locked to events, I think, like Zeraora. But a lot of them you can get just from having the game without having to have any mystery gift or anything tacked on top of that. So I am glad of that. Now, on the other end of that spectrum, they did unfortunately make several of the Megastones locked behind the online. So there's no way to naturally get those in-game. Which means years from now, when those servers are gone, that means, anyone who hasn't gotten them already will be completely unable to obtain those Megastones. So I really hated that idea. That's just as bad in my book as making them linked to some temporary events. From this date to this date, you can get a mystery gift. That's basically the same thing. You got to work for it by doing the online battles. This game does have online battles in it, by the way, which Legends Arceus didn't have. I don't really care about the multiplayer component of any Pokemon game too much, but yeah, if you care about that, it is there. But I don't like locking main game content like that's behind the online. So I really wish they made a way for those Megastones to be obtainable in game somehow, other than having to deal with the online server bullshit. So I didn't care for that either. So anyway, speaking of megas, I guess it is time to dive into the entire Pokedex situation, which, again, if you follow this channel, you know how much of an opponent I was of the whole Dexit situation. That is the main primary reason I did not purchase this game or any other Switch Pokemon game. I refused to buy a Pokemon game that doesn't have all the fucking Pokemon in it. So, this game, of course, continues that trend. A vast majority of the Pokemon is not in this game. Starting with just the base game alone, this game had 232 Pokemon in it, which is actually slightly even less than Legends Arceus had. Which, at the time, Legend Arceus was the smallest amount of Pokemon we've ever had in a Pokemon game since fucking Gen 2. Legends Arceus had 242 Pokemon in it, which was even less than, Gold and Silver back in the day that had fucking 251. So this game had 10 less than that to begin with. Now, the DLC did add in an additional 132 more Pokemon on top of that, bringing the total to 364, which is better than Legends Arceus, but also still worse than Gen 3, which had 386 Pokemon in it. So, still an absolutely abysmal amount of Pokemon in this game. There's 661 missing, which ironically is actually only 2 less missing than was missing in Legends Arceus, because we've had more Pokemon get introduced in the meantime, at the start of Gen 9. So despite having, over 100 Pokemon more than Legends Arceus did, it's only missing 2 less than that game was. So as a ratio, there's really not much difference. But yeah, a massive amount still missing, which is obviously a non-starter for me. Besides that, obviously Mega Evolution is in since it's the main focus of the game, but that is the only gimmick in. There is no Z moves, there is no Gigantamax, Dynamax, whatever bullshit. There is no Terastallizing, which Terastallizing was lame as fuck anyway, but if you're going to have it, then you need to have it in the game. So none of the other gimmicks are in. One thing I will give them credit for is any Pokemon that has a regional variant that is in this game, all of its variants are in as well. So, like Meowth, I think was added in the DLC. You can get Cantonian Meowth, Alolan Meowth, and Galarian Meowth. So all 3 of those are in. Things like, Slowpoke has his Cantonian form and his Galarian form. Anything that has a variant has its other ones. Even the Hisuian variants are in as well. So that is, again, better than Legends Arceus, since most of the variants, even for Pokemon that were in, were missing from that game. So a slight improvement there as well. Now, as for the Mega Evolutions, of course, we did get new Megas in this game. That is the only new Pokemon we got in this game. We didn't get any new species. We didn't get any new regional variants. We didn't get any new, regular forms or anything for anybody. Unless you count Eternal Flower Floette, since it was never officially released back in X and Y, despite being programmed into the game. There was no official way to get it. So you can kind of count that, I guess, if you want to. But other than that, as far as the Mega Evolutions go, we did get 26 new Mega Evolutions in the base game, and then an additional 19 more on top of that in the DLC, bringing the total to 45 new Mega Evolutions in this game. That's to go along with the 48 Mega Evolutions that were introduced in Gen 6, bringing the total overall for the franchise to 93 Mega Evolutions, which all of the old Mega Evolutions that were already a thing are in this game. Every single one of them is here, plus the new ones. Kyogre and Groudon are in this game as well, and both of them are in with their primal reversions as well. So those kind of sort of count on top of that. So as for these 45 new Mega Evolutions, their designs are honestly kind of all over the place. A lot of them, actually, I really did like. We had some tremendous designs in this that I think were fantastic. And then we had the exact opposite end of the spectrum, where we had not only some of the worst Mega Evolution designs, but some of the worst designs in the entire franchise. So they basically ran the whole gambit as far as designs go this time. What I'm going to do to go over these is basically I've looped all the designs into 3 groups. The ones that I actually really liked, the ones that are kind of just neutral towards, and then the ones that I absolutely fucking hated. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw each one of those groups up on screen one at a time and talk briefly about each group. So first of all, for the ones that I actually really like the design of, I had these. So mentioning a few random ones here, all the starters for this game did get Mega Evolutions, their final forms. So Meganium, Emboar, and Feraligatr all got new Megas. The Kalos starters did as well. So Chestnut, Delphox, and Greninja also got Megas. So Meganium and Emboar, I actually really loved both their Mega designs. Meganium's is very basic, basically just the flower overtakes its neck, and it's got a few other minor changes here and there. So there wasn't much to that design, but overall I think it looks nice, and it kind of just fits with Meganium's whole line. So I like the way it worked out, even if it is pretty basic. Emboar, out of the 3, I think was the winner. Mega Emboar is just an absolutely top tier design. I think he looks really great. So I'm glad things worked out well for him. Feraligatr, unfortunately, was on the other end of the spectrum. We'll get to him eventually. But as for the Kalos starters, Delphox's Mega is, again, one of the top tier designs, which I'm really happy about since Delphox is one of my favorite Pokemon in general, not even just among the starters. So I'm really glad that Mega Delphox didn't end up looking retarded or something. I'm really glad that it ended up getting a cool design, which riding on a broom made of fire. And I just like the way it looked overall. So I'm really happy about that one. A few other random ones that I just really liked. Chandelure and Dragalge are two Pokemon whose base designs I have always been a big fan of, and both their Megas looked really nice to me. So I'm glad both those got cool designs too. Golurk is absolutely fantastic with his Mega. I didn't expect him to get a Mega at all, but him getting one and it looking cool is a very nice surprise. Mega Hawlucha was one I was a big fan of. That's one of the ones they revealed in the build up to the release for this game in one of the trailers. And as you know, I am a big pro wrestling fan, so anything wrestling themed, luchador themed, I generally like that. And I like base Hawlucha's design. And the Mega design really expands on that, and they just totally nailed it. So I think it looks really great. Mega Drampa is far cooler than he has any right to be. He basically de-ages in his Mega Evolution and turns back into what he used to look like when he was young, sort of thing. So I love that whole concept. I love the look of him. He really turned out well. Mega Phalanx turning into a fucking Megazord is an example of a goofy design that I actually love and think it really works, which is rare for Pokemon these days. Most of their goofy designs look absolutely fucking retarded. But this one I think is one that fits the Pokemon and looks cool enough to where you can get over the goofiness of it. So I think they rode the line with that one just right, and I actually really love that design. Mega Staraptor was another one of my big favorites. I'm always a big fan of most of the bird Pokemon. So having Staraptor get a Mega at all is cool, and having it look as badass as it does is a really great thing. I also think it complements very well with Mega Pidgeot, which is cool since both those are, their respective regions' birds. So both them getting cool Megas that kind of go together well, I think was a really cool thing. We actually had some Pokemon who already had a Mega Evolution get new alternate Mega forms. They put a letter Z at the end of their name, kind of an extension of like the, Mega Charizard X, Mega Charizard Y sort of thing. So we got Mega Absol Z, and I love his design as well. Again, Absol is one of my overall favorite Pokemon of all time. I love base Absol's design. I love original Mega Absol's design with the whole angel wings. And now we got Mega Absol Z, where he's got the black color scheme. He's got sort of the fallen angel look going on with like the one evil looking angel wing. And overall, I think that design is just really cool. So it's awesome that they gave him something new and it still looks badass. Again, those two forms complement each other very well, the regular Mega and the Z Mega. So I love how that all worked out. Mega Lucario Z is another case of that, where the design is just really nice. And again, it complements the original Mega very well. I could see both those forms like fighting alongside each other. So I really like how all that worked out. And then lastly, I got to mention this one because this one absolutely floored me. I was surprised how much I liked this design, which was Mega Crabominable. Which, original Crabominable is a Pokemon that I actually don't like his base design. I think it's his head. Like, his head and face just look so goofy and retarded. Like, he actually looks mentally challenged. Like, I can't get over that to like the base design. Which sucks because Yeti crabs are cool and they turned it into this goofy retard looking thing. And I never liked that. And now he got a surprise Mega out of nowhere. And his Mega design is absolutely top tier. They fixed his head, which is the main thing to me. They made his head and his hair not look goofy and retarded. They made him stand up. He's got like giant ice crystal fists to smash people with. And I absolutely love the way that Mega design wound up looking. So I was really surprised to have Mega Crabominable on my list of favorite Megas, considering how I feel about his base form. So good for him. They took a design that I actually didn't like before and turned it into a really cool one. So I wish stuff like that would happen more often. But yeah, shout out to Mega Crabominable. So anyway, moving on from the ones I really like to the ones that I'm just more neutral towards, which is the majority of the group here. A lot of these designs I don't really have a ton to say about. Like I said, I'm neutral on them. I guess I'll address the starters. Chestnut. Again, Chestnut is kind of like Crabominable, where I don't really care for his base form. The Mega, I think, is an improvement over base Chestnut. Not to as much of a degree as Crabominable was. But I do think it's a step in the right direction. But overall, I'm still not overly impressed by it. Mega Greninja is one of them where I actually really like the way he looks, but they've got him constantly hanging upside down from a giant floating water shuriken, which I think is just kind of lame. Like, if he wasn't doing that all the time and he just did that during like a certain move or something, then it would be fine. But the fact that he's like that all the time just irks me. So that kind of knocked him down a peg, where if he could just stand normally, I feel like he would be in the good list. But because of his pose, he's in the neutral list. So anyway, besides that, Mega Dragonite, I know he's pretty polarizing. He's another one they revealed in the build-up to this game. I think that he was the first new Mega that they showed off, actually. Which I kind of go back and forth on him. He's obviously got the heavy influence of Dragonair into his design. I feel like they could have done better with this, but at the same time, Dragonite was always kind of goofy. So I don't hate it, but I also don't really like it too much either. So that's why I threw him in the neutral side. Sometimes when I look at him, he looks okay, and sometimes when I look at him, I think he looks retarded. So it kind of changes on the hour. But overall, I'm just kind of neutral towards him. A few other random ones. They did give Eternal Flower Floette a Mega Evolution as part of the story. That is the only form of Floette that can Mega Evolve. Now, with this design, again, I actually like the way it looks. I like what we got. But ultimately, I feel like it's a missed opportunity because they could have gave us a Mega that looks more like an Eternal Flower version of Florges, I think. So this wound up in the neutral pile, not because I dislike the actual design, but more so just because I feel like they could have done better with it, and there was some wasted potential there. Beyond that, Skarmory. Skarmory is one I feel like I should hate more, but I can't bring myself to, and I don't really know why. All they did for him was basically paint him gold and give him giant feet for some reason. So, I feel like I should not like this. Maybe it's just that base Skarmory is so cool, it's kind of carrying the design. But I'm not crazy about him, but I can't bring myself to hate him either. Mega Heatran. I'm not big on Mega Heatran. I get what they were going for with the, he's so hot he's melting himself. But he winds up looking like you just took a Heatran figure and stuck it in the microwave or something. So, I'm not too into that design. Mega Darkrai is another one that I kind of go back and forth on. Again, I get what they were going for with turning him into the giant floating eyeball. He kind of looks like a Kirby or Zelda enemy or something. But I'm not really into the look. Seeing him in game made me like him a little bit more because he can like retract his head and be the eyeball sort of form. But with his head out, he just kind of looks like a fat, inflated Darkrai. That's weird. He kind of looks like a blimp or something. So, I wasn't huge on that design either. But anyway, now we gotta move on to the bad designs, which fortunately there aren't too many, but most of them are really, really bad. So, with this, I guess I'll start with Mega Victory Bell, since it was shown again in the build-up to this game in one of the trailers. I don't know what they were fucking thinking with this. I don't know who thought it was a good idea to take Victory Bell and just make it fat and choking itself to death. I I've complained before about, the recent generations of Pokemon and their tendency to lean into meme designs that are really lame, that they're clearly just making to try to get viral free marketing from people making stupid memes about it. And this one and several other of these megas are kind of the epitome of that. So I hate everything about this design. I actually raised a Victory Bell in Pokemon Y, I think it was, and used it for like one of the post-game battle facility teams or whatever, alongside like Mega Charizard Y. And I actually ended up kind of liking Victory Bell more from doing that, and seeing it turn into this just was really lame and stupid. So I hated that design. Beyond that, we have Mega Zygarde. Mega Zygarde just looks stupid. They basically just glued a nuke cannon to his head. I don't know who thought that was a good idea. Zygarde already has 3 different forms, all of which look better than this. Zygarde complete form felt, for lack of a better word, complete as it was. I felt like he didn't even need a Mega to begin with. His complete form is already like his final form. So turning it into this weird looking thing for plot reasons, I just don't see the point in that. Especially since Xerneas and Yveltal didn't even get new Megas, which I expected them to. So I feel like they could have not even bothered making a Mega for him, and things would have just been better. As for Pyroar and Meowstic, I think both their designs not only are not that great, but they were also a missed opportunity, since I felt like we should have got separate Mega forms for both of their gender forms, since the male and female of both Pyroar and Meowstic look drastically different from each other. Doing different Mega designs for like male Pyroar and female Pyroar, and then separate ones for male Meowstic and female Meowstic. I think that would have been a cooler thing to do. It would have gave us more designs that potentially looked better, instead of just sort of mashing them together into these goofy looking designs. Especially with Mega Pyroar, since his mane is so ridiculously huge that it's just comical. So I didn't care for any of that. Barbaracle, Mega Barbaracle's a weird case, since base Barbaracle's design as a Pokemon that I used to not like, but over time has actually really grown on me. I saw someone make some fan art of it one time in like a Digimon looking art style, and for some reason that made me like his design more. So he's a design that's grown on me a lot over the years, to the point where I actually kind of really like base Barbaracle. And now they're giving him this Mega Evolution, and it's just off enough to where it bothers me. I think it's mainly the legs. Like, if his legs were thicker and had a wider stance, instead of being this, he looks like he's kind of standing on tippy toes or something. If they redid his lower half, I feel like it would mostly be fine. But they've talked in interviews and stuff about how they don't want to make a Pokemon look too cool for whatever reason. And this feels like one of those situations. It feels like they made a cool design, and then they changed it just enough because they thought it was too cool, and they ended up making it fucking lame. So Mega Barbaracle just bothers me, and I don't really like the look of him. Mega Scovillain and Mega Baxcalibur, those are 2 Pokemon whose base designs I didn't really care for, and their Megas don't do anything to change my opinion of that, so I don't really care for them either. So then we come to the 2 biggest offenders, even more so than Mega Victory Bell. We have Mega Feraligatr and Mega Starmie. These fucking designs, I don't even know what to say about these. Mega Feraligatr, when he's just standing around, it looks like he's got like a toilet lid just glued to his back. Which you can't tell it from this artwork, but the concept of this design is the red toilet lid looking thing like folds down over his head to form like an upper jaw, and then his arms clasp together and make like a lower jaw, and it's supposed to turn him into basically looking like a giant version of Totodile with a big goofy red head. And I absolutely hate everything about this entire concept. I mentioned before about the meme designs. This is peak meme design right here, and it's absolutely fucking poison to this franchise. They took a giant, cool kaiju alligator and turned it into a fucking joke. I don't know why they feel the need to keep doing this stupid ass shit. I'm glad that the other 2 starters, Emboar and Meganium, didn't end up suffering the same fate. It's unfortunate that happened to Feraligatr, but at least he's the only one. I hate everything about this design. I hate the concept of it. It doesn't even make any sense. It just looks goofy. It looks dumb. They did it for the memes. That's all they fucking care about. It's retarded. I hate everything about this. And sadly enough, he's not even the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is absolutely Mega Starmie. I don't even have any words for Mega Starmie. It's just embarrassing at this point. What can you say about that? It's Starmie, but his legs are stretched out. No, I don't give a fuck what it's supposed to be a reference to. I'd see people that, oh, it's supposed to be a reference to this Japanese movie, or I don't give a fuck. It looks retarded. You can reference something and not make something look retarded. I don't care what it's a reference to. This looks like shit. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to be a fan of this franchise sometimes when they putting shit out like this. There's no need for this. This is down there among the absolute worst designs in the entire franchise, along with the origin forms for Dialga and Palkia and fucking Ace Cube. Like, these are just absolute bottom of the barrel, shit can terrible. And it's sad that happened. Now, I'm glad that it wasn't too widespread. We've had it be pretty widespread in some Switch Pokemon games. Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet come to mind. But it didn't happen as often in this game. Most of the designs were good, or at least neutral. But the few that were bad were really fucking bad. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on these designs in general. But overall, in closing, just my overall view of this game, it's not the worst Pokemon game that I've seen come out on Switch. Again, at least from my detached, just watching a playthrough point of view. I've seen worse, but nothing about this really makes me want to buy this game or play this game. Like I said, I didn't care for the story and the characters too much. Mostly the characters, more so than anything. It felt grating trying to sit through that, so I was just kind of happy that it was over by the time I got to the end of it. The gameplay looked fine, but nothing that really demanded that I play it anytime soon. The mega designs, for the most part, were a win. I think the few bad ones were extremely bad, but for the most part, I thought they did fine with those, and I would like to see those in a better game in the future that will probably never exist. But liking a few of the designs is not enough to make me want to deal with all the garbage that comes along with this game. It didn't address any of the perennial problems that I've had with this series for the last several years. Obviously, Dexit and all its attendant bullshit is still very much heavily present in this game. A lot of the modern design problems that Pokemon has is still present here. The meme designs and a few of the mega forms, the insufferable characters, the general goofiness, the sort of corporate, safe sort of feeling that everything has. I hate to use the term soulless, but, it kind of has that feel in some places. So, a lot of those negatives just outweigh any of the positives of this game for me, despite it not being the worst outing I've seen in recent years. It's really not anything to make me want to, jump into this game at all. So, yeah, that was my thoughts in general. I was hoping to get this video out before Pokemon Day. You can see how well that worked out. I do want to cover the Pokemon Day announcements. I'm going to record that video as soon as I get through recording this one. If my voice will hold out anyway. So, anyway, I guess that's all I got to say. So, lots of luck to you and yours.